Greetings, 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 greetings. It is I, King Clifford Jefferson, a descendant and descendant of Godfrey, the fifth kind of man Jew, son of folk, the ruler of Jerusalem. I am the reincarnation of King Edgar the Peaceful. I am here to restore your history about what we now call America. If you watched my last video that I posted, I spoke about the United States of America, which is actually 13 states. Prior to September 20th, 1777, they were called the United Colonies. And as the United Colonies, they were subject to the laws of the British America. British America, prior to that, was called the British Empire. The British Empire was overseen by the House of Tudors under Henry VIII when he reformed the Church of England. That was through the House of Tudors, which we will speak about today. I really think that our people suffer from a lack of information, but uh, as they say, a hard head make a soft butt. So I'm bringing this truth to you all so that you all can see it, because seeing is believing. Um, a lot of this history has been right in front of us, but nobody has been able to tell us this history or explain this history because we're taught that it's somebody else's, but we know it's not because why? We are Englishmen. All right. So this lecture is called Dead Man Do Tell Tales. Dead Men Do Tell Tales. All right. I'm not going to show my face. I'm going to speak in the spirit of my ancestors as well on behalf of the incarnation or the incorporation of the King, which is King Edgar the Peaceful, which you know, as I said, as Jesus Christ. All right, so give me a second. Okay, let's get started. Let me share my screen. Okay, everybody should be able to see my screen. I'll blow it up just a little bit so you all can see it if I'm able to. Okay, let me just read a little bit. Okay, the Great Sale. Let me show you a bigger version of it. Here it is right here. This is the Great Sale of the United States. Once again, this is the original Great Sale of the United States, of what you now call America. It was actually the Great Sale of the colonies, who were subject to the British Crown at that time. The British Crown was subject to were under the authority of the rulers of the monarchs from King Henry VIII all the way up to King George III. Once again, they were ruled under electoral monarch from Henry VIII to King George III. All right, let's prove this. The Constitutional Convention of the United States. There's your flag, United States flag. The Constitutional Convention took place in Philadelphia from May 25th to September 1787. Although the convention was intended to revive the League of States and first system of government under the Articles of Confederation, the intentions for the outset of many of its proponents Chief among them was James Madison of Virginia and Alexander Hamilton of New York, was to create a new frame of government rather than fix the existing one. The delegates elected George Washington of Virginia, foreman, commanding general of the Continental Army in the late American Revolutionary War from 1775 to 1783, and proponents of a stronger national government to become president of the convention. The result of the convention was the creation of the Constitution of the United States, placing the convention among the most significant events in America's history. Several broad outlines were proposed and debated, most notably the Madison's Virginia Plan, presented by James Madison, and William Paterson's New Jersey Plan, submitted by William Paterson. The Virginia Plan was selected as the basis for the new government, and the delegates quickly reached consensus on a general blueprint of a federal government with three branches: the legislative, the executive, and judicial. On the parliament, there was only one, the legislative branch, along with the basic role of each branch. However, disagreement on a specific design and powers of the branches delayed progress for weeks and threatened the success of the convention. The most contentious dispute involved the legislature, specifically the composition and election procedure for the Senate as the upper legislative house of the bicameral Congress, and whether proportional representation was to be defined by a state's geography or by its population. The role of the executive was also hotly debated, including the key issues of whether to divide the executive power among three people or vest the power in a single chief executive to be called the president. However, the president would be elected, the length of a presidential term, and the numbers of allowable terms, whether offenses should be impeachable, and whether judges should be chosen by the legislature or the executive. Finally, slavery was also a continuous issue, with the delegates debating the insertion of a fugitive slave clause, whether to allow the abolition of slave trade, and whether slaves were to be counted in proportional representation. Most of the time during the convention was spent to deciding these issues. Okay, so as we said, we know that the executive power is under the authority of what we call the president, and this is done to what we call electoral college. Electoral college is how presidents are voted in. This was preceded by what we call electoral monarchs, which debunked or reformed hereditary monarchs and the system that it went under. All right, but we're talking about this president administration, which now composed of what we call the legislative, executive, and judicial branch by those who were creating, who all came together to form what we call this constitutional convention. Prior to this constitutional convention, you have what we call the provincial Congress of New Jersey. Let's just get a little bit of information on that. The Provincial Congress of New Jersey was the transitional governing body of the province of New Jersey in the early part of the American Revolutionary. It first met in 1775 with representatives from all of the Jersey's then 13 counties to supersede the royal governor. The last royal governor here in North America was William Livingston. The one who replaced him was William Franklin was the last royal governor. The one who replaced him after he was arrested was William Livingston, and William Livingston was succeeded by William Paterson. Once again, the last royal governor of New Jersey was William Franklin, the illegitimate son of Benjamin Franklin. He was replaced and locked up and replaced by William Livingston, who ran for governor along with Richard Stockton, who was actually a member of the actual crown. I'm gonna show you in a second, all right? Along with William Paterson. As you can see here, the president of the Provincial Congress of New Jersey was Hendrick Fisher. Secretary was Jonathan Dickinson Sargent. And the assistant was William Paterson and Frederick Fringleton, however you pronounce his name. And they met in Trenton, New Jersey. Prior to that, the crown government was in Perth Amboy, where we're seated at now. Okay, Because we see one of the assistants was William Paterson. Let's see who William Paterson is. First, Richard Stockton. Richard Stockton was an American founding father. Let me see if I'm sharing that. Richard Stockton, born October 1st, 1730 to February 28, 1781, was an American founding father, lawyer, jurist, legislator, and a signer of the Declaration of Independence. Stockton was the son of John Stockton from 1701 to 1758, a wealthy landowner who donated land to help bring what is now what we call Princeton University, then known as the College of New Jersey, located in Newark, to Princeton, New Jersey. He was born at the Stockton family home, now known as Morgan and Stony Brook neighborhood of Princeton. He attended St. Wolf Finley Academics at Nottingham, which later became West Nottingham Academy, and the College of New Jersey, located in Newark, graduated in 1748. He studied law with David Ogen of Newark, who was at the time head of his legal profession of the province. Move further. He says his wife was poet Anna Boudinot Stockton. He was actually a friend of George Washington. His wife was a poet Anna Boudinot Stockton, sister of New Jersey statesman Elias Boudinot. The Stockton had 6 children. Their son, Richard Stockton, became an eminent lawyer and prominent federal leader. Elias Boudinot was married to Stockton's sister, Hanana Stockton. Okay? So this is Richard Stockton, Canonial from the Continental Congress. All right, give me 1 second. Let's look at his political career. Now, we went through this already. We talked about the Stamp Act and the Declaration Act of 1766, which is a result of why the 13 colonies actually declared their independence as a result of the tax that the British monarch put on them. But it says here, Stockton served at the college afterwards known as Princeton University as a trustee for 26 years. In 1766 and in 1767, he gave up his law practice for the purpose of visiting England, Scotland, and Ireland. So he left in 1766 to go visit what they say is England, Scotland, and Ireland. His fame preceded him, and he was received by the most eminent men of the kingdom. Stockton had the honors of personally presenting to King George III an address of trustees of the College of New Jersey, acknowledging the repeal of the Stamp Act, and his address was favorably received by the king. He was consulted on the state of American affairs by such noblemen as Marquis of Rockingham, with whom he spent a week at his country estate. He met with Edmund Burke and Earl of Chapman and many of his distinguished members of parliament who were friendly to the American colony. Everybody see that? Everybody hear that? So that means that it says that here, Stockton returned to America in 1767. And in 1768, Stockton had his first taste of government service when he was elevated to the seat of the New Jersey Provincial Council. In 1744, he was appointed to the New Jersey Provincial Council, a New Jersey Supreme Court. So he elevated to the seat of the New Jersey Provincial Council, and in 1774, he was appointed to the Provincial Supreme Court of New Jersey. And in 1768, he was elected to the American Philosophical Society. So we know the New Jersey Supreme Court was under the authority of the King's Court prior to 1947. This was the King's Court. He said he first took a moderate stance in the trouble between the American colonies and Great Britain. And in 1774, he drafted and sent to Lord Dartmouth a plan of self-government for America, independent of Parliament, without renouncing the crown. This Commonwealth approach was not acceptable to the king. When Parliament resolved to raise revenue in the colonies in 1775, Stockton declared that the colonies must each of them send 1 or 2 of their most ingenious fellows, enable them to get into the House of Commons, i.e. the lower house, and maintain them there until they can maintain themselves, or else we shall be fleeced to some purpose. So that means that the House of Commons, who were nothing more than members of the county, who were actually part of the colonies, who broke away as a result of what we call the taxation that was imposed upon them by the crown, as it says right here. All right. Now, another member associated with this overthrow of the crown government was not just Richard Stockton, but it was said William Paterson, because William Paterson was a part of the provincial Congress as well. All right, as well as William Livingston, as I said, the second governor of New Jersey. I think he mentions him here. Find it. We're gonna move forward there. Okay, Richard Stockton. Let's go to William Paterson. Back to the provincial council. So the third governor of New Jersey was William Paterson. Second governor of New Jersey was William Paterson. The first governor was William Livingston, who replaced William Franklin, Benjamin Franklin's illegitimate son. All right. It says here. Okay. Second governor of New Jersey. This was William Paterson. He was the second governor of New Jersey. The first governor was William Livingston from 1766. William Livingston was the first governor of New Jersey. All right. He replaced William Franklin as the royal governor. So as we go back to the provincial council, let's just go back there. William Paterson had a lot to do with this because we can see the William Paterson's tenure. Look what this man had a hand in. Hendrik Fisher was an enemy of the crown. And as we see, William Paterson was subject to the crown but wanted to go away from the crown, but didn't want to upset the crown. And the crown was upset with his so-called petition and result of what we call the Stamp Act that was justification for the breaking away of the 13 colonies from the British, what we call British America, and then now calling themselves the 13 states, or what we call the United States. Now it says here, Richard Stockton, born in County Antrim, Ireland, Paterson moved to North America colony at a young age. After graduating from the College of New Jersey, now Princeton University. Everybody's going to Princeton University. He studied law under Richard Stockton. All right. So William Paterson, the second governor, studied law under Richard Stockton. Richard Stockton was appointed to the New Jersey Supreme Court, as well as he's part of what we call the New Jersey province, New Jersey Provincial Council, which was under the authority of the Crown. So here we see some undertaking of a co-op of members of the 13 colonies who broke away from the Crown unlawfully. How was this unlawfully? Let me prove it. As we see. First Great Sale by the First Committee, July 4th, 1776. It resolved that Dr. Franklin, Mr. Adams, and Mr. Jefferson be a committee to bring in a device for a sale for the United States of America. July 4th, 1776, Journals of Continental Congress. For the design team, Congress chose the author of the Declaration of Independence. Although these distinguished founders were among the ablest minds in their new nation, they had little knowledge of heroetry, so they didn't understand heroetry. Heroetry goes back to succession. To help convey their vision, they asked Pierre Eugene de Chemitier to work with them. All right, so they asked this Genevian national to assist them in creating the design for the United States of America. He also had a hand in creating what we call the hierarchy or the seal for New Jersey and Delaware. All these were under the property of what we call the Crown. Y'all hear me? The Crown. Let me just prove it right quick. New Jersey Revised Statutes, Section 46.3-2, certain tenures and holdings turned into free and common soakage. The tenures, honors, manors, lands, tenements, or hereditaments of an estate of inherited at the common law, held either of the King of England or of any other person or body politic or corporate at any time before July 4th, 1776, and declared by Section 3 of an act entitled An Act Concerning Tenures passed February 18th, 1795, is to be turned into holdings by free and common soakage from the time of the creation forever thereafter shall continue to be held in free and common soakage, discharge of all tenures, charged and interest enumerated in that section 3, in section 3. So that means that the land under feudal tenures is no longer being held under that capacity because all those letter patents, i.e. charters, constitution, which the authority has been revoked by the King of England or other person or body politic or corporate. Corporate means to be corporate, you have to incorporate, and incorporate is what we call incarnation, and it's in the abstract form. All right, and then move further. So we're talking about United States sale of America, not just United States sale, Delaware sale, New Jersey sale, or any sale for that matter. The origin of the United States sale. On July 4, 1776, the same day that independence from Great Britain was declared by the 13 colonies, the Continental Congress named the first committee to design a great sail or national emblem for the country, similar to other nations. The United States needed an official symbol of sovereignty to formalize and seal or sign international treaties and transactions. See, this is just for commerce. We want to establish a nation, but this is just to do commerce on a national level. It took 6 years, 3 committees, and the contribution of 4 men before the Congress finally accepted a design, which included elements proposed by each of the 3 committees. These are the elements proposed. As you can see, the first committee consisted of Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams. While they were 3 of the 5 primary authors of the Declaration of Independence, they had little experience in heraldry, so they didn't know anything about heraldry or the origin of hereditaments, and sought to help Pierre Eugene du Cimetière and the artist living in Philadelphia, who would later also design the state seals of Delaware and New Jersey and start a museum of the Revolutionary War. Each of these men proposed a design for the sail. Franklin chose an allegorical scene from the Exodus, describing his note as Moses standing on the shore and extending his hands over the sea, thereby causing the same to overwhelm the Pharaoh, who is sitting on the open chariot, a crown on his head and a sword in his hand. Raised from a pillar of fire in the clouds reaching to Moses to express that he acts by command of the deity, motto, rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Jefferson suggested a depiction of the children of Israel in the wilderness, led by a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, for the front sail, and Hinks and Horses, the 2 brothers who were the legendary leaders of the first Anglo-Saxon settlers in Britain. For the reverse side of the sail, Adams chose a painting known as the Judgment of Hercules, where the young Hercules must choose to travel either on a flowery path of self-indulgence or the rugged, more difficult uphill path of duty to others and honors to himself, as we can see. All right. On August 1776, Du Cimetière showed his design, which was more along conventional heraldic lines. So his design was more towards heraldic lines. The shield had 6 sections, each representing the countries from which these states, i.e. 13 colonies, have been peopled, i.e. populated, i.e. colonized, i.e. settled, using the symbols for England, Scotland, Ireland, France, Germany, and Holland, surrounded by the initials of the 13 states. The supporters were a female figure representing liberty, holding an anchor of hope and a spear with a cap, and on the other side of the American soldier holding a rifle and a tomahawk. The crest was the Eye of Providence, and the radiant triangle with glory extends over the shield and beyond the figure, and the motto, E pluribus unum, out of many, one, and a skull at the bottom. Okay, so as you can see, it said here that it's standard for the 6 nations or the 6 countries or the 6 kingdoms that existed and who had populated and settled what we here call North America. But when you say England, we got to be careful because we know a lot of people doing business under what we call England. And we're going to come to this conclusion with this. We know who Scotland is. Scotland is Ireland. I mean, Scotland deals with King James, the House of Stuart. We know the House of Stuart was controlled of the Kingdom of Ireland. Then we know the House of France, that goes back into what we call Clovis the Culture, the Clovis the First, the Merovingian, Carolingian dynasty. You got Germany, then you got Holland. We can care about the lesser of them because we're not from Holland, we're not German, we're not from France, nor are we from Ireland, nor are we from Scotland. We have a history in these territories, but that's not our descent. Our descent is England. But when we see England, it doesn't take you to the history of England, it takes you to the roads. Tudor roads. It takes you right to the Tudor roads. The Tudor road, sometimes called the Union Road, is a traditional Floric heraldic emblem of England. It takes its name and origins from the House of Tudors, with united with the House of Lancaster and the House of York. Tudor roads consist of 5 white inner petals representing the House of York and 5 red outer petals to represent the House of Lancaster. As you can see, you have the white rose, the House of York, and you have the red rose, the House of Lancaster. The red rose and the white rose are not the House of the Tudors. The House of Tudors is what resulted as a result of what we call the War of the Roses. All right, let's go to the House of Tudors. The House of Tudor was a royal house of the large wealth of English origin that held the English throne from 1485 to 1603. It descended from the Tudors of Penniman and Catherine of France. Tudor monarchs ruled the Kingdom of England and its realm, including their ancestral wealth and lordship of Ireland. Later, the Kingdom of Ireland for 118 years with 5 monarchs: Henry VII, Henry VIII, Edward VI, Mary I, and Elizabeth I. It says the Tudors succeeded the House of Plantagenet as the rulers of the Kingdom of England and were succeeded by the House of Stuart. I repeat, the Tudors succeeded the House of Plantagenet as rulers of the Kingdom of England and were succeeded by the House of Stuart. House of Stuart were the British Empire who set up shop over here on behalf of the House of Tudors under Elizabeth I through the succession of Henry VIII, who descended from Henry VII, who was the founder of the House of Tudors, who took their authority by what we call right of conquest as a result of what we call the War of the Roses. The War of the Roses were between the House of the Yorks and the Lancasters, which were cadet branches of the House of Plantagenet. And the House of Plantagenet was a royal house which originated from the lands of Anjou and France. The family held English throne from 1154 with the ascension of Henry II of the end of the anarchy, with the marriage of Matilda and Godfrey, with Richard III dying in the battle. Henry II was the son of Godfrey, the 5th Count of Anjou, where I descend down from. Henry II, Henry Kirkmaster, and Henry Fritz Empress, and Henry the Plantagenet was the King of England from 1154 until his death in 1189. At various points of his life, he controlled England, substantial parts of Wales, Ireland, and a large part of France, including Normandy, Aquitaine, and Anjou, and the area that was later called the Angevin Empire. This is where John and all his descendants come down from. You see, his father was Godfrey, the 5th Count of Anjou, and his father was Fulk V, the ruler of Jerusalem. Right there. Also known as Fulk the Younger, was the Count of Anjou as the Fulk V from 1109 to 1129, and the King of Jerusalem, which his wife, with his wife from 1131 to his death. During their reign, the Kingdom of Jerusalem reached its largest territorial extent. So all this stuff we talking about, the Kingdom of Jerusalem in the abstract, talking about the Bible, Jerusalem, Jesus and all that abstract is talking about this story that was actually concrete, descending down from Fulk V, where you get into stories of what we call the Crusade Wars. All right, all this things from my father's house under Godfrey the fifth kind of Anjou. How we know that? Because when you go back to the United States sale for the United for what we call of go back, right here. So as it said that uh, England, the du Cimetière stated that he went more traditional, dealing with the heraldic lines, meaning succession, hereditaments, and the show has 6 sections, each representing the countries from which these states have been populated. All right, by the people, using symbols for England, Scotland, Ireland, France, Germany, and Holland. Holland. So if you don't come from these nations, then you are a nobody, because everybody else who came out of there come from either of these nations, now call themselves American citizens. Now have opt out to be called Negro, white, black, colored, and Ethiopian, when none of it has to do with the successorship or heirs of hereditaments pertaining to this land, as I just proved. England is the notes to the red rose, and the red rose is not the note to the House of Tudor. The red rose denotes to the what we call the House of Lancasters. All right, the House of Lancasters was let's find out, which united with the House of Lancasters. All right, it says the Tudor rose, called the Union Rose, a traditional heraldic emblem of England, and it takes its name and origin from the House of Tudors, which united with the House of Lancasters and the House of York. The Tudor rose consists of 5 white underpellets. So you see this right here. Now look at the House of Lancasters. This is not a red rose. This is the red rose. The House of Lancaster was the Gardane branch of the House of Paterson. The first house was created by King Henry VIII in England, created the earldom of Lancaster. Let me just find the rose for you real quick. I had it here a second. I don't know what I did. But as we can see, let's go back here. Yeah, all right, I see it. Right here. Okay. It said the red rose. The red rose of the House of Lancaster. Let's click that. This is what they're talking about. The Red Rose of Lancaster was a heraldic badge adopted by the Royal House of Lancaster in the 14th century and modern times. It symbolizes the county of Lancaster. The exact species of cultivar which it represents is thought to be Rosa galactica officinalis. This also goes back to John Gaunt, right? The illegitimate son of Edward III. John Gaunt's younger brother, Edmund Langley, first Duke of York, adopted the White Rose of York as his heraldic badge. His descendants fought for the control of the throne of England during the several decades of civil war, which we call the War of the Roses. Let's click that. The War of the Roses, known in time for more than a century after the Civil War, were a series of civil wars fought over control of the English throne in the mid to late 15th century. These were fought between the supporters of two rival cadet branches of the royal house of the Plantagenets, the Lancasters and the Yorks. The war extinguished the male line of the two branches, leading to the Tudor family. Did you hear that? It extinguished the male line of the two branches, leading to the Tudor family, inheriting the Lancasters' claim to the throne. It's right there. Who was the Tudor? family. Tudors of Pyramid were the nobles of aristocratic family connected with the village of Pyramid. Blah, 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 blah. And going into the Tudor dynasty. Let's kick Tudor dynasty. There you go. The House of Tudors. See, it's all connected, y'all. It's all connected. So if you're not associated with the Tudor, what we call the Red Rose, which is symbolic of England and its descendants dealing with hereditaments and succession, you're in trouble because the United States still is built upon that as established by Du Cimetière. And we know that because when you get into his origin, he comes from Geneva. First, let's prove it, right? Correct? This going slow. Bear with me. Yeah, 1 second, y'all. All right. So as we can see, the United States still adopt its origin from England, Scotland, Ireland, France, Germany, and Holland. Okay, you can look it up on your own. And out of these 6 nations, countries, everybody else got their start from. All right, they got their start from. And this is from the gentleman, Du Cimetière. Just click him right quick. Pierre Eugene Du Cimetière. Pierre Eugene Du Cimetière from Geneva. All right, Geneva, October from 18th September 737, Geneva to October 1784, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Was Genevian American, member of the American Philosophical Society, naturalist, American patriot, and portrait painter. All right, you can see he had a hand in designing all this, but the key word is he was from Geneva. All right, Geneva, very important. Let's go ahead. Kingdom of Burgundy. The Kingdom of Burgundy was a name given to various states local in Western Europe during the Middle Ages. The historical Burgundy correlates with the borders areas of France, Switzerland, and includes the major modern cities of Geneva and Lyon. Everybody see that? The Kingdom of Burgundian was succeeded by what we call the Merovingian dynasty, right here. We talked about the Merovingian dynasty. They never claimed to be descendants of the Anglo-Saxons. Let's prove it right quick. The dynasty name medieval Latin Merovingi, sons of Merovech, derived from the unattested Frankish form akin to the attested Old English Merowing, with the final ing being the typical Germanic patronymic suffix. The name derives from Salian king Merovech, who many legends surround. Legends, myth, folklore. Unlike the Anglo-Saxon royal genealogies, the Merovingians never claimed descent from a god, nor is there evidence that they were regarded as sacred. The Merovingians' long hair distinguished them from amongst the Franks, who commonly cut their hair short. All right, so you got the Franks and you got France. You got Franks who inhabited France, and France was set up by the Angevin Empire, who descended from the Plantagenet dynasty. All right, okay, let's get there. Go back. So he's from Merovingian dynasty. The Merovingian dynasty descended down from the Carolingian dynasty. You see that? And who was the founder of the Carolingian dynasty? Clovis the first. Carolingian. Let's do it this way. Clovis the first. Clovis the first. Clovis the first. Clovis the first was the first king of France who united all the Frankish tribes under a ruler, under one ruler, changing the former leadership from a group of petty kings to rule by a single king, and is showing that the kingship was passed down to his heirs. He is considered to have been the founder of the Merovingian dynasty, which we just said never claimed to be descended from God like the Anglo-Saxons. So that means that uh, Geneva was a city that's actually a part of the kingdom of Burgundy. And the kingdom of Burgundy encompasses all these kingdoms, Merovingian, Carolingian, and all these were started by Clovis the First. All right. Now, it's mighty strange that when you get to North America, you have what they call a town called Clovis, New Mexico. And we know Mexico is symbolic to Native Americans. And we know the Native Americans, you got the Mexicans, Aztecs, then you got the Olmecs, which were the original people of what they now call Mexico. But when you're dealing with Mexico, it says that it was first inhabited by what we call the Clovis culture, right here. The Clovis culture. The Clovis culture is a name that derived from the Frankish descendants. And how we know that, let's just go here. Clovis, the new Clovis, began in 1906 when the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad was being constructed through an area, and the railway engineer were, now mind you, this territory was inhabited by the Clovis culture. It says here, at first known as Riley Switch, the town was reportedly be named Clovis by the station master's daughter, who was studying about Clovis, the first Catholic king of France at the time. The settlement built up quickly in 1909 and was incorporated. Now we know that's a lie because the first inhabitants of Mexico was the Clovis culture. Right here, Clovis culture. From Clovis, New Mexico. And they go back to what we call a concept called time immemorial, time out of mind, out of sight, where the customs run contrary to the customs that are being practiced today. So what I'm showing you in history and in law, because I just showed you the legislation, I'm going to show you one more to show you the intent of the legislation in regards to that land belongs to the king or anybody acting in the capacity as king. So you can fact check it. Give me 1 second, and now I'm closing with this. Give me one second. Oh, here we go. Sorry about that. Try here. Right in my face. This is the same legislative statute. Fee is simple creation by deed. Fee and simple does not allow you. Every deed conveying land shall, unless exception be made therein, be construed to include all estates, rights, titles, interests, use, possession, property claims to demand whatsoever. So whatever interest you claim to have in ownership or property, because you're saying the same word, whatsoever, both in law and equity of the grantor. Because if you have an interest in something, you can only fall in two categories, either the grantee or the grantor, and you're not the grantor. So if you have any type of interest in property or ownership, including fee and simple, it doesn't have to include the word heir because it's about to say it. Including the fee and simple if he has such a estate and then to the premises or conveyed with the appurtenance to the word heir should not be necessary in any deed to the effect of that such conveyance of the fee and simple. In every deed conveying the land to the executor, trustee, or other fiduciary in which the granting clause of a habeas clause 1 to the successor of assignees should, unless other words or limitations are used, be construed as conveying the fee simple of the grant, fee simple of the grantor if he has such an estate to the same effect as the word heir to the sign has been used. So whether it said heir or if it didn't say heir, the so-called conveyance of such an extent of a grant based off it was being given from the grantor is limited to the grantee on any type of interest or ownership or property that you claim to have in lieu of a deed, certification, certificate, I don't care what it is. And if any suit to reform a deed means to make it like the original by way of meetings of the mind or called the grantor's doctrine, uh, or the grantor's doctrine. It says in any suit to reform a deed of a conveyance of a land, whether absolute or by way of a mortgage, which majority of you have, the estate conveyed be limited to the grantee, his successor or assignees forever, meaning that if you have a property, land, building, fixtures, etc., and you pass it down, it's conveyed as being limited. I don't care where you at in the United States of all the 50 states, which was actually supposed to be 13 states, i.e. 13 colonies, which in our essence, they didn't have any rights to the land because they owned it fee and simple. And fee and simple is conveyed as being limited because it said the estate conveyed to be limited to the grantee, his successor in the signs forever, or to the grantee, his legal representatives on the signings forever. Such limitations show in the absence of other words in the deed clearly indicating intention to limit the estate to the life of the grantee. Once again, I repeat, it be clearly indicated in an intention to limit the estate to the life of the grantee and be considered as presumptive evidence. Look that word up. Presumptive evidence that the grantor intended thereby to convey the estate in fee and simple based off the limitations in the actual deed and such lands notwithstanding to the omission of the word heir from such deed. So if it don't say heir in it, or if it do say heir, it still has to be considered or decided by what we call the common grantor doctrine. All right. Why? Because of this. 46:3-6 gifts, grants, conveyance by states are allodial. The state is not a state. The state or any state is an actual business because the state is a public entity. Look your state, your state statute of your state and see what the description of the entity, what they call the state of whatever state you're in, and see one that say is a business or is a administrative. It falls under what we call the Administrative Procedure Act, which is nothing more a business. It's not a state. It's not the legislation. The state or the agencies are getting their authority by the head executive officer, i.e. the governor. And the governor was supposed to be a royal governor until they overthrew it through the crown by William Livingston, William Paterson, and Richard Stockton, as well as what we call, what's the guy name? Hendrick Fisher. So it says here in closing, all gifts, grants, or conveyances made prior to, once again, July 4th, 1776. That's the day your seal was created. That's the day your seal was created. And the person who creates your seal for your sovereignty was rejected by the crown. Look up the Declaratory Act of 1766. It says that 1,766 of any state of inheritance by letter patent, meaning a letter patent is given by the king under the great seal of the king. So if you got a letter patent under the great seal of the state or any other manner by the state, by the legislature thereof, or by the commissioners or agents of forfeited the state, or by other lawful and competent authority under the state, should be and remain lordial and not feudal, and shall forever be and continue in free and pure lodium only, forever discharged with all feudal tenures and the interests thereof and all other service whatsoever. So as you can see, and as I have proven, that the United States, i.e. the state of New Jersey, because the state of New Jersey is the state, i.e. the territory, where the United States declared their independence through what we call the Virginia Plan and Jersey Plan, which were issued by James Madison and William Paterson. William Paterson studied under John Stockton, and John Stockton submitted the petition to King George, and it was denied. And that called for what we call repeal of the Stamp Act and the Declaratory Act being initiated, which says that all America and its colonies and its people are subject to laws of Parliament. And with that, I digress. Peace.